Hello and welcome to another Albion Online questions and answers video. In my last dev talk, I announced that I would be stepping down as game director and CEO, and I asked you to bring your questions and comments. Today I've invited new game director Moritz Bokelmann and co-creative director Schwahn to go through these questions with me and to bring some answers to you. So let's get started. The first comment is, keep making those question and answer videos, even if you're not the CEO anymore. You are still the public face of Albion Online. Well, as you can see, I am making a question and answer video. I do hope that I am no longer the face of Albion Online, though I do hope to transition this role to these guys. And while I will still be appearing in videos, dev talks will be handled by them.
And ideally also more members of the team, yeah.
Next question. With the role of creative director now being split between 3 people, a creative council, do you think that it'll be harder to maintain a clear theme or vision for Albion's creative direction? What do you guys think?
No, actually, I don't think we will see any major changes. Actually, this whole transition has been made with continuity in mind. We've been with the team for many years. Each and every one of us that is part of this creative council has been here for 5+ years. We've all had our ideas turned into features with and by the team. We've built upon ideas of you, Robin, and of course of each other. And so I'm pretty confident that this will not be a really big shift in direction from our part, just because we have this practice in working together already. All the individual contributors that work with us stay largely the same. So really the team that is going to be working on Albion remains intact. And so that will of course also really shape how this game continues to move forward in the direction that it has been going in the last couple of months and years.
One thing to add about the creative assembly or the creative group, we have been working like this behind the scenes for a while, right? We have been exchanging ideas and we are not always the same people, so we have different priorities a bit, but from that discussion is where all our features in the past has been resulted. So there will be a lot of continuity because that process of working together, exchanging ideas, challenging each other's ideas, that is what we have been doing. And that is one reason I think why we have been so successful with the game.
Absolutely. Next question. Most companies stop investing significant resources into games that have been running for over a decade, largely due to shifting player preferences. Robin's decision to step down naturally raises more questions about the game's future, but with Albion Online still showing signs of growth, is there a different long-term vision or goal behind it that sets it apart from most other companies?
It's a good question, and I understand where it comes from. And we, of course, look out in the industry and we see what's going on. But really what we do is we look at our product and we see Albion Online and we want to grow the team, we want to grow the product, we want to continue putting new features out there. And we think we have some things in store that players will be really happy about.
Yeah. I mean, we always said over the years that every decision we take for the game has to be the right decision 10 years down the line. And I think there's so much room for future expansion. I'm really excited to see where you guys take it. All right, the next question is quite simple. My main question is, are these game developers people who also play the game and join the content?
Yes, we do. Not as much as we would like to, because there's a lot of time we have to work on the game. We try to play incognito with our secret account, so the community doesn't know who we are. Recently, I've been hooked myself as a completionist on the Albion Journal. I am now close to 700 achievements and trying to see how far I can push it. But of course, we don't play on this very hardcore level that some of you players do. We simply try to get some time in, so we stay a bit in touch with the game. And we have some of our team members who are very experienced, very core audiences who help us with these very in-depth questions about guild politics or high-end PvP questions. We rely on people who play that a lot, which we don't have the time for.
Yeah, I can say to that that it's always challenging to play the game on that level, because in the end you work until you're spent at the end of the day, And if you have any energy left for challenging stuff, then you typically try to get that into the game. So then going home and then playing on a competitive level is very, very hard. You can do it in phases sometimes for a couple of weeks, couple of months, that you like, okay, now I'm really hooked into it and I get really up there. But continuously over so many years, both developing the game and staying very relevant at the top end is, it's I would say almost impossible. But we do, like you said, we have always tried to have both enough personal experience and a good network of people that do play regularly and at a high level. And we have those people in the team and we have those people externally and we talk to them. That's the best source of information. But I've always said the main challenge as a game developer is that we have, maybe 100 eyes or so looking at the game, maybe 200 if we're counting everybody who's somewhere around it. But the players have hundreds of thousands or millions of eyes looking at the game, and you see so much more than we do, and that's why we need the feedback coming. And even if something might seem very, very obvious to you when you're playing the game, it's always important to point out to the developers if you think something's obviously wrong, because it might not have been obvious to us. Next question is a really long one. I have over 18 years of MMORPG experience from a consumer perspective. I've played countless MMORPGs, some for a long time, some only for a short time. Many I've seen die, a few I've witnessed their success and growth. These few, whose success and growth I was able to experience, unfortunately became unfun for me after 1 to 2 years. The reason is that these games changed so much with the emerging success and growth that they lost their core identity. They wanted to please everyone too much. Such changes were often accompanied by a change in leadership positions. So I'd like to know if you have similar plans. What fundamental conceptual changes are you planning for Albion in the future? More conveniences, more instances, more solo content, simplifications, hand-holding? Or are you trying to go back to your roots with some adjustments? Or are you trying to continue the middle way that you've taken over the last few years? So, what's your plan?
So that's a very long question and a lot of topics. So in general, we don't plan to change our strategy completely. So what it means with the middle way is that we have to cater to different audiences. That's exactly what we want to keep doing. Like we have to make the game interesting for guild warfare. We have to make it interesting for open world PvP and small scale groups. We also want to cater to people that are playing in smaller scales. And we have been doing, I think, a pretty good job with this, with offering different types of content in the game for everyone. And that is the goal, to keep working for all of them at the same time, because it's a sandbox and we don't want to dictate you what you have to do in this game. We want to try to enable your playstyle to have as much fun as possible. And there's no big change in direction planned. We don't want to say, oh, now we take Albion into a completely different direction. No, we want to stay true to this game. We have been working on this very long, and Robin can relate to it. It becomes kind of like your own child, right? And we also want to take care of this and don't want to just send it somewhere. We are very much invested ourselves that we keep our identity as it is.
And again, I can only go back on the continuity thing that we talked about before. The user here asks about conceptual changes. The whole transition, the way we're making it so that we don't implement significant conceptual changes. We really want to stick the course, want to grow Albion the way we've been doing in the past, and continue focusing on what we believe is the best for the majority of players. There will always be updates that are more focused on one player group and then updates that are focused on the other player group. But really all of those player groups that we have in Albion have their part, and we don't want to completely neglect one of them and focus on one other specifically. Really, we want to stick the course and keep improving Albion the way we have in the recent years.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going to continue to face the same challenges that we've faced the last couple of years, which has been finding this middle ground between, supplying the depth of content for the hardcore end at the one hand side, and then on the other side, making sure that the much larger group of not quite as hardcore players also finds themselves in the game, and balancing between these two groups, because you need both, right? Without the depth in the end, it becomes a bit meaningless, and without the broad player base, you just don't have the basis for running a game on this scale. I mean, running servers, running the team, So the middle ground, I think it is. Next question is, I'm kind of keen in seeing you guys maybe release a vision map.
I can totally see the interest in something like this. We try to relatively regularly update the community in form of our development update, dev talks that we bring out every few months. And we released one just a few months ago, I think 2 months ago or so, in which we detailed that our immediate plans would be instance PvE VP content, new dungeon, and then we would move on to faction warfare and give that a major revamp and overhaul. We're still on that course. We still want to continue doing that for the short-term future. The longer-term future is always a little bit more difficult to fully commit to, because the reality of it is things change. Things change based on our resources and availability of how long things take, but also, of course, on what players want. Players might want something completely different than they want right now in 6 months. And we've always been very keen on listening to what the players have, and we try to incorporate that into our update plans. And so really committing to a long-term roadmap more than a year's worth is difficult, I have to admit.
Yeah, and I would add that right now we're in a transition period for the leadership as well. And I think we are always happy to publish a vision map when I was really convinced that I had found the right answer for the next, 1.5, 2 years or longer. But know that the reason why we might not be publishing something has always been because we want to have the opportunity to adjust plans as much as possible. Because, constantly observing player feedback means constantly reacting and changing possibly direction. All right, next question. With the rumored orange zones, is the team planning on leaning further away from the full loot aspect of the game?
It's kind of a two-parter. The first part.
What are orange zones?
Exactly. Let me say something about that. So it is indeed true. We are currently playtesting a version of orange zones in a hell-themed dungeon that we're working on.
Well, let's straighten out. It's not true. There's no such thing as an orange zone. There's not going to be an orange zone in the game, right?
No.
There's going to be one dungeon in which a particular rule set applies.
Exactly. So what we're currently looking to find out whether it's feasible is we're working on this hell-themed dungeon, and we're working on a PvP risk rule set that would behave somewhere in between yellow and red zones, where when you die, you in fact die, but instead of losing everything, you lose only your inventory, but your equipped items remain on your character. And we're testing this exclusively in this type of dungeon. I say testing because we're sending this through playtest. We're not sure we're going to do this, but the chance is there. And really, we don't want to move away from the full loot aspect of Albion. Albion is a full loot PvP game, and we always believe that the high end of PvP is going to be full loot. However, we need to transition people from very risk-free knockdown PvP to get to that point at some point. And we believe that there is potential in this type of content in orange zones that softens the transition from knockdown to full loot PvP. And this dungeon is really now the first opportunity that we have in the game to really make use of that. Most of the other content that we've had before doesn't really utilize that kind of rule set well. Our current implementation of Hellgates or corrupted dungeons, you really get all the loot at the end. So by that point, having this kind of rule set just doesn't make sense anymore. And we also have no current plans to broaden the scope of this rule set. Right now, it's for this dungeon type, We plan to use it there. We're testing it right now. If it succeeds and players like it, we might think about doing more, but there's no plans right now.
Yeah, and I think it's worth adding that this comes as a reaction to many, many years of experience with full loot PvP combat, especially in instanced controlled scenarios, right? Because in the end, this is a result of our conversations about Hellgates and the challenges that they face. And what we learned is that the more controlled a PvP environment is, and therefore the more predictable it is for the players, the more difficult it is to actually have full loot PvP, because essentially the winners will remain in that content. People who lose will be driven out of that content, which makes the pool of players smaller. Then again, you have winners amongst that pool, those remain, and then eventually the feature just reduces to a very small player base that are amongst the elite. And that means it's also really, really hard to recruit any players into features like that. And therefore, we're experimenting now with a new type of controlled environment, controlled PvP environment, which has a rather high degree of predictability, but also has a little bit better risk management for the players. That doesn't affect the open world at all, right? This is purely for instant PvP, let's put it that way. All right, next question. Any plans on enhancing the graphics?
Well, yes. So, as I said before, we believe Albion has quite a long lifetime ahead of it, and that also means we have to continue to stay competitive and attractive for new players. And in line of that, we will have to also look at the visuals. We already see it now in the game that some of the things that we've done 10 years ago, or 5, 6, 7 years ago, look a little bit dated in comparison to the things that we're introducing nowadays. And we have to go back and touch that. But on top of that, we're also, of course, thinking about technological advancements of the game. New shaders, new lighting, things like that will always be a topic on our list of to-dos. We don't want to radically change things to look like a completely different game, but we do want to visually overhaul the game over time and make it continuously attractive to players. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe from past experiences, we've always used opportunities when we made major changes to content to update the visuals. We've kind of done this as a continuous process, and then sometimes have these breakthroughs. And we can maybe share that at the moment we're doing research, let's put it that way, on maybe a bigger push, but there'll be more opportunity to talk about that later.
A little bit later down the line. Yeah.
All right, next question. Oh, I have questions for the team. I'm having trouble introducing my more casual gamer friends to Albion. The 50% fame and silver that Premium gives just scares them off, as they don't think that they'll have the time to maintain it every month. Any ideas to make the game more casual friendly, or do you guys find the game to already be in a good state?
Casual friendly is not the word I would use, but we should make it more accessible. So what we want is we want players to have a better time onboarding to the game. We are right now working on improving the tutorial, overhauling it, and also improving the post-tutorial. There you can choose a path where you say, oh, I want to be more interested in PvP. Then you get a bit of an introduction into that topic. And that is all part of making the game more accessible for new players, because we want to stay true to our identity, and we think the game in general is in a good state for its core identity. But we also want to get more players enjoying it. It's not sacrificing our core identity, but making it easier for new players to join into the game. And that is a continuous process. So we will do bigger changes now with the next update, but then we will iterate on it. We see how it performs, and then we have to improve constantly to make it easier to onboard new players and make it more accessible. Not necessarily more casual, but make it more accessible, make it easier for players to get into Albion and see what is really cool and fun about this game.
And maybe to add about the premium and the difficulty of maintaining premium, I would say that, well, first off, you're not required to have premium to be able to play Albion Online. And if you don't have that level of intensity of playing, you might not need Premium to continue to play Albion on a more casual level. And then maybe one more point, we have been working on bringing the price of silver down, the price of gold down in the market, which is challenging to do without making too many sacrifices on various sides, right? We don't want to make earning silver too difficult for the players. We don't want to make services too expensive, but we also can't essentially control the price, because it really depends on how much gold is coming in. So I'd say if your friends are worried about, it's too much of a commitment, then have them play the game without Premium for a while. And as they get deeper into the game, it becomes easier to earn the amounts of silver to maintain a free Premium state, and otherwise consider paying for the game, because there's a lot of people working on the game, and it's your money that's going into the development of this game. So all Premium subscription end up paying for improving Albion Online. Next question. When will we have a new feature? I mean, like tier 9 maps, tier 9 pickups, and their respective items.
Currently there's no plans for T9 or T10 or anything. At the moment, we never know in the future if we might do, but generally we like to expand our items. I think that's what he was referring to, is mostly more horizontally, like we give you more options instead of just straight up more power. I wouldn't exclude that we would never do T9. We never know, but at the moment we don't have any plans for that.
I mean, in reality, we essentially have tier 9 and beyond with enchantments, with awakened items, etc. And if you're asking if the player is asking in terms of challenge or new content, do you have anything for them there?
Well, there will be new content available in every one of the next coming updates. A fully new feature is very soon gonna drop with this aforementioned PvEVP dungeon that is targeted at groups of 2s and 3s. Then we're revamping Faction Warfare to be still based on the fundamentals of what Faction Warfare is, but will have very new elements to it. And of course, all of these updates are going to be accompanied with new features and updates that are not yet publicly announced anywhere. So I think that user can definitely expect some things happening soon.
The next question is, I know it'll break the idea of sandbox, but questline would be a good addition. So I'm guessing this question asks for a questline storyline in a traditional way of a theme park MMORPG or something comparable. And well, we also think it would be a good idea for some players. But the big question is how, and that's something we've been thinking about, because we don't want to break the focus on player-driven economy, full loot PvP, guild warfare. All of those things need to stay highly relevant. And at the same time, if you introduce a PvE experience and a storyline, it also needs to feel relevant. And finding a way where we're not taking away resources from the main production, the main focus of the game. So we're probably talking about adding resources dedicated to storyline. All of that is, I can share things we've been talking about and where we're excited about the idea, but we haven't finalized the perfect plan for it yet, because it's quite challenging to weave into the fabric of Albion Online, which was really meant as a PvP-focused, guild-focused game initially. And inching closer and closer to a good idea of how to do this. And when we have a good idea, there's nothing standing in the way of going, let's do it. We're committed to, I think we all think it'd be a really good idea to expand the world with an exciting story and an exciting PvE experience. It's just waiting for us to finalize the plans, I think. Next question. You are going to work on expanding Albion world and story. What does that mean? Any chance for new enemies, factions, cities, locations, biomes? Okay, so what I'm actually working on is pulling together all the different lore that has been developed over the years. You might not be fully aware, but whenever we develop a new enemy, a new dungeon, a new feature, there is a backstory to it. We need this backstory for a common understanding with the arts team and the design team to kind of put a visual to the feature. So there's always lore being developed in the background, but it's never explicitly or rarely explicitly told in the game. And I've been pulling together all this lore, and over the years, a lot of contradictions have appeared. A lot of things might seem outdated now. So at the moment, we're kind of establishing a common ground again and making sure that everything has a very solid foundation and we know how everything fits into the lore. And this is a preparation for us to be able to tell anything about this game or about this world in the future. Which is super cool. I mean, we've done so much work in the background in the past that has never seen the light of day. And I think there is a really exciting world and exciting reasons for the factions in Albion to be the way that they are. And we're also laying the groundwork for some possible future expansions. In a way, it's a bit similar if anybody plays tabletop RPGs. It's a bit similar to building like a campaign book for the world with building a lot of breadcrumbs that the development team can then later on pick up and be like, oh, maybe we want to go do this and maybe do this. So there's a lot more room than we will possibly ever manage to get to. But that's cool. We have lots of opportunities. So yes, there's definitely the chance for new enemies, new factions, new cities, new locations, new biomes. All of that is in the lore. It's just a question of when do we package it into an expansion that satisfies all Albion players, right?
When and how.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we talked about PvE. PvE is something that can absolutely make use of lore and story and history. And we have a lot of players that are excited by exploration and discovering story elements, and Albion in our minds has not enough of that yet, and we have a lot of cool things that, as you say, that we have as developers, but that otherwise nobody else knows, and it would be great to be able to tell that story. So we're really excited about that.
Absolutely. Next question. Will they continue the Albion lore online? Will we learn anything about dragons? Will they add pets, marriages, etc.? Stone-based weapons? Lots of different questions here. So,
Yeah.
First off, the lore that's published online will probably see a revision at some point after we finished going through the backstory development and aligning it with everybody on the team. There's some really cool but old stuff there that in parts is not fully aligned with what the team's been doing. So that will at some point see a revision, but we also don't want to spoil anything that we could reveal in the content of a future PvE campaign. So we'll see about that. Will we learn anything about dragons? Well, if we ever get to tell the backstory of Albion, we'll certainly learn something about dragons. But that's something for another day. Will they add pets? Well, that's a feature question. Will you add pets?
Yes, actually not committed to anything, but we have been talking about maybe in the future adding pets to islands specifically, that you can own a pet on an island.
Okay.
Yeah,
That sounds interesting.
we're
Tossing
tossing
big shoot. You can have
tossing
a
ideas back
cat
and forth.
dog.
As Micha says, no full commitment to a timeline. But this is something that players repeatedly keep asking for, and we don't want to ignore that. And I mean, we play games in which we have pets, and it's likely that this will be in the future for Albion.
So the next part of this question is marriages. Well, we've supported marriages in a way for a long time in Albion. We have a bride's outfit and a groom's outfit. But the rest of that, in my opinion, is role playing. So if you want to do that, you can role play. We don't have any plans for a formal marriage system, although that would be cool too. But Albion's not that game, I think. I hope the new game directors rework what endgame means and its responding systems, in particular the world boss and Avalonian dungeons, as well as reworking or removing the expeditions.
The world bosses, we are aware that is one thing that we don't have a short-term solution right now, but we are already talking about concepts to improve, because we know in the high outlands they're usually controlled by a certain group, and they even ask them for money for people to play there safe, and that's definitely not a way of playstyle that we want to support, and we think that's good. In the short term, we would probably reduce the rewards a bit, so for those people who control it, that it's not that much of a easy way to make money. In the longer run, we want to rework the mechanics there so it is a bit more exciting, because currently the gameplay is actually not very good. So we are aware, but we need the time to actually build the improvements there.
Yeah.
And expeditions?
Expeditions, we've talked about as well, that we have some things lined up. It's not concrete really yet, and nothing that we will be doing immediately, but we definitely see that some of the earlier, especially expedition content, is a bit dated now, and we feel that we need to adjust it. And actually, I would use this as an opportunity to just go into one of our general priorities, because obviously we want to continue bringing new stuff to the game, but we also have it high on our priority list to continuously revamp and touch on things that are already in the game and that players play on a daily basis. We want to continue improving those features. I mean, he says endgame. Endgame means something very different for different player types. But really revamping and reworking the things that are already in the game is always going to be a high priority for us. And we're always going to balance that with introducing new things to make sure that all the features of Albion are on a competitive level in terms of, well, being able to play them.
Next question. I was a guild leader and content creator for this game for many months. One of the game's weaknesses, I think, is the lack of PvE. I think having great PvP is an amazing thing, and I think constantly balancing the meta is wonderful. However, I don't think this game can survive based on its PvP prowess alone. I think there should be a team at Sandbox that is dedicated solely to creating rewarding and challenging PvE encounters so that casual non-PvP players don't run out of things to do.
In the long run, we want to offer more PvE challenges, and we also think about increasing the team there, that we have more people helping out producing more PvE content without sacrificing our core identity as a PvP game and all the other aspects. So we are already talking about increasing the team to add more PvE in the long run, right? Not something we can do in a couple of months, but in the long run, we agree with that direction in general.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, in the long run, that sounds like it's very, very far off. I would say that the idea of expanding the team specifically to deal with PvE, that's not so far off.
Correct, but
that's
when you see it in game,
it'll take a while for it to actually make it into the game. But we're talking pretty specifically about how to add that PvE side that this player is asking for to the game without compromising the PvP. Next question. How soon is the castle rework planned? And are there any guild content plans that will include unique loot so that guilds and alliances will be motivated to hold and develop territories' castles for a long time?
Currently, there's no castle rework planned. We last year added 4 guilds fortifications and did a lot for their warfare and the way they fight each other. we are already discussing future editions, how we can improve existing systems and making more interesting objectives to fight over, also looking at adjusting some of the objectives and rules for objectives. But currently, castles is not among the list that we think we need to rework. We actually want to look more at other topics where we think we can gain more. Yeah, I don't think, or at least I'm not aware, maybe you can in the comments add something specific that you think is not working with castles. So far, our opinion is, that castles in general do work. But the whole meta around the guild warfare can after a while settles down, right? The last update has been now almost a year now since you got the fortifications, and we should look at adding more stuff, and we have that on our backlog, and we're already talking about things, but nothing concrete yet. But it's probably related to territories more than castles.
Yeah. And a quick addition to the unique loot. This is always obviously a challenge with balancing the different needs of players in the game. On the one hand side, it'd be really cool if the guilds had something super unique, but if they have super unique access to this, it means that the control over this is in the hands of a very few in the game, which isn't necessarily good for the entire player base. So that's always a question to weigh, and that's also being discussed in the context of potential changes to territories. All right, next question. We hope that these directors can actually fight the game's rats, the only bad thing in Albion. I know John will do everything to improve crafting. Okay.
There's no big... It would be helpful to know which rats and which content you mean, because there's some content types where it is a big problem. Static dungeons is one where it's actually something we have on the radar that we need to improve the rules there, because people can steal the chest too easily as a solo, and it's not really working well as a group PvE, PvP setting. But in general, in the whole game, if players can escape and have chances to escape in content, it's actually a good thing in our mind, because that usually helps keeping this content alive if players have a chance to participate without the need to killing someone. And if they can some rewards and get away, and that's their strategy, and they can have some success, that really helps to populate a feature. However, if they are too successful or dominate certain areas, that another playstyle is then undermined, like static dungeons.
From the new creative directors, I'd like to ask if they are going to work more on the PvP side of the game, especially Rhodes and Hellgate, and to shake the meta with more balancing changes and reworks to underused and mostly outdated weapons. It's a shame to have so many weapons, yet so little variety.
Yeah, let's talk about the balance patches first. That's the biggest topic, I guess. We specifically hired a new game designer last year, Nick, to help constantly working on balance patches all the time, because I don't have, frankly, the time to spend on it. And this topic really deserves one person to constantly work on it and pays attention. And we will keep working on this, like that we try to push a bunch of balance changes with every patch that we release and try to address the meta in certain content types. However, realistically, we cannot address every type of content and every meta in each patch, right? We rather would say, okay, now we focus on this problem and we focus on that problem. And part of this is also looking at older items, which we have always been doing a bit on the side. And every time we have a bit more time, we like to look at older, outdated items that feel bad or have not so interesting interactions. Some of the older weapons are not really that fun to fight against, especially. And also making sure that we try to find a unique place for all items, which, to be frank, is pretty difficult. We have so many items, and as soon as you make this, like this new thing, then it makes someone else go down another item. So we have to really think about a new niche that we can potentially fill with its unique ability. But that is something we constantly want to work on and will keep working on. And we specifically hired someone who his main job is just to work on the combat bench patches, so we have something fresh, because the combat meta that it changes and is healthy is super important for the game.
Yeah, maybe add a few words about the goals of that balancing. So what can we actually expect? I think like there's always an expectation that every weapon should work in every context. And that is not something that we're actually actively striving for necessarily. I mean, we try to make weapons work in as many contexts as possible, but the main goal is that there are some contexts for each weapon where that weapon is relevant, because making every item relevant in every content is counterproductive, right?
And it's not gonna happen. In reality, it's not gonna happen if you try like it's. I think it's way better to go and try to find a niche for each weapon. If it has more usage, cool, but try to find one niche where it definitely shines, and then try to look at each meta and every content and see that if it becomes too stale or too one-sided or the interactions are kind of bad, we have to add new options or tone some other options down that we get something fresh there every time. But realistically, we cannot look at every content type in each patch. That sometimes if you're very specialized on one thing, you may feel like, oh wait, the meta in my specific context, say Corrupted Dungeon, has been stale for like a month or something, and you feel like, oh, why are the devs not looking at this? The truth is we have to take our time to go by content type, and we can see if we can faster there, but the reality is with more items and more content types, it's a bit more difficult to have fast iterations on every type.
Next question. Hey guys, wondering when we will see the open world change for skulls on the minimap when you have a legitimate 1 versus 1. I understand why you would have skulls pop onto the map with group fights, but a 1 versus 1 should stay hidden in my opinion. Wondering what the new directors think of this.
Agree. We will make that change that he's suggesting soon. I don't know when it goes live, but the change will be that if you kill one person without an assist, we will not show the skull on the minimap anymore. Because of what he says, because as a solo player, then it's a signal to everyone that just comes and they will eat you alive. And to allow even 1v1s in the open world, we will make the change he is suggesting.
Next question. I've been wondering this since you guys first created the quick purchase loadouts. Are you guys planning making improvements to the quick purchase loadouts? I would love a feature where you could make it so that you could buy weapons and armor with a target IP and not with tier, enchantment, and quality. For example, if the quick purchase would buy based on the IP, you probably could get a tier 8 equivalent at a much lower cost than the actual tier 8 weapon and armor.
It's a fantastic suggestion. In fact, it's pretty much exactly what I envisioned when I was designing the loadouts back then. The quick purchase loadout we put on top of the loadout system. Unfortunately, we ran into some real technical difficulties here, in particular with marketplace performance, just given how IP and our tiers and quality and enchantment, how that plays together, and just the various cross combinations of how to reach a certain IP. Now imagine many players doing that kind of searches on the marketplace at the same time. Simply marketplace performance would crash. So really the loadout system as we have it right now is built the way it is, not due to lack of our vision for something better, but rather due to technical limitations. And it is absolutely on my agenda to get back to it and to see that we can find some dedicated time to sit down with our technical people and see if we can improve that. I think that would be a great improvement to the system. It would be an improvement that I personally would love to see. So yeah, great suggestion. We will get to it eventually, and it will always have to balance it against the performance of the game.
All right, a good follow-up to that question, I think, is I just wish that the UI changes don't stay stagnant or get worse because wonderful people have to move on to heavier responsibilities. Will Albion UI be neglected?
Well, I mean, I can very safely say that that will not be the case because I've not been in the UI team for 1.5 years already. I've given over control to Raul, one of our employees, who I have very high faith in, and the team has delivered great things even without my direct input. I mean, examples would be the bank overview that we released in the last update, the whole journal implementation and how all that worked, and a whole plethora of quality of life things. they've already done without my direct say-so. So I really have no fear in that regard. But it's nice. It's still nice. It's still nice to hear that comment.
And we have another question that leads right into that, and that is, SBI, please create a new button in the market that says sell order all.
We currently have no slots in that UI to fit in that button. No, realistically speaking, that is a bit of a difficult one to put in. There's a whole bunch of rules that you would have to define on how exactly that works. One could do it by saying just take whatever the last sell order is and go 1 silver cheaper or something like that. There are ideas that we're tossing back and forth here. We're a little bit afraid, of course, that would lead to a lot of things not getting into or not being sold to buy orders quickly enough. Obviously, once buy orders don't get filled, people get a bit disappointed with the market. So there's pros and cons to weigh here. There is merit to it. It's something that we have discussed, that we probably will discuss again, and we'll think about. But it's not on the immediate agenda.
Next question. Fix the UI system on islands such as hire laborer, plant crop, harvest a crop. There should be an option to harvest all key and plant all.
Yeah, totally see it. I mean, Micha just mentioned potentially adding pets to islands. That's not the only thing that we think about when we think about island improvements. Laborers is one of the other things that we absolutely want to touch. Farming generally is one thing we want to touch. We have a long list of ideas. We're in the process of detailing those ideas into something that we can actually tie together into a feature and then, or into a feature set and release with one of the next updates. Bit difficult to put a concrete timeline on it because we haven't put the feature set together yet, but there's really a lot of people in the team that want to see improvements there, and so we do too. So yeah, I think players can expect some improvements coming their way in updates in the near to medium future.
Yeah, I mean, that said, I think there has to be a conversation also about the definition of what is farming, what is the effort I'm putting into farming, right? Because of course you could imagine all of farming being reduced to a single button press, but then what would be the meaning of being a farmer if there's no time investment into this activity? It would basically be a passive income source together with premium. So, you know, streamline. There's good reasons to streamline a UI, but there's also, it needs to be the more you streamline it, the more you need to have a conversation. Okay, what is being a farmer then if it's just a button press? I heard this is the last batch of crystal weapons that just released. Does that mean no new hammer and shapeshifter?
No, of course there's a new hammer and a shapeshifter crystal weapon that will be part of the rewards of the currently running season. So I don't know where this rumor started.
Well, and beyond that, we also have plans to add crystal offhands. So we're not quite done with crystal weapons yet. It is true that they are nearing the end of their production line, if you want to call it that. And we'll then think about what we do after that.
All right, perfect. Next question. When will legendary weapons be worked on, or is it going to hit the back burner with the new creative direction?
No, that's still something we're talking about. We have been, they have been pushed aside a bit because the recent year was also very busy with our short update cycle. We didn't have really time to flesh these ideas out, but we're actually already working on concepts for how we can introduce them. But nothing, no timeline yet. But we are already working on a concept, and that's going to happen at some point.
Next question. There's only one thing I'd really love to see improved in Albion, and that's the visuals in terms of animations and their effects. Taking advantage of the weapon tiers, they could add a greater variety of basic attacks, different ways of walking, running with a weapon, different wielding stances, different casts of special abilities, and equipment based on the user's tier. This would give the game a sense of progress, mastery, and proficiency. Another idea I've been thinking about is that it would be crazy if all weapons could have an alternate special ability, since there's such a wide variety of weapons. Instead of adding more, they could add more versatility to the existing ones.
Oh, okay, there was a lot in that question. So let's start with the visual part. Yes, we definitely want to improve the visuals of the combat, and we do that on the side all the time. Whenever we have some resources, we look at some older effects, animations, improve them, bring them up to par with our newer standards. The whole progression idea, why I can understand why he would feel that exciting, that's a lot. That would be way too much resources we would spend in the progression of one weapon, which also actually might make it harder to read, and we might change timings and then it plays different, which is also not good. So overall, I would say weapon animations and effects changing over tiers is something we probably won't do.
And there's also the whole technical side to consider, right? So one of the things to understand about an MMO is that, unlike a single-player game where the developers typically have quite good control over what content appears in what context, we have to basically assume that in a 300-player fight, every single combination of gear, tier, etc. would be present. So in terms of amount of memory that you have to dedicate to holding all these animations and effects in parallel in memory, it's just a huge risk on performance. The next question. Grave Armor needs to remove the ability to attract people on a mount. It's impossible to defend against, which makes escaping from gankers an impossible task.
Okay, Graveyard Armor. I would agree it's one of our items and abilities that is one of the most outdated ones, and it's a bit on the list for a while, where something we would like to change in general, because the whole way the ability works is not super great. At the moment, it is very strong for ganking, but that's also kind of its only place right now. So if you take that out, then where do you use it even? What we want to do is, in the long run, actually overhaul the item when we have the capacity. So we need, because I think this one needs a completely different ability design and new VFX and everything, because it's one of our weakest items in the game in terms of how it interacts with everything.
Next question. Will this game ever come to console?
We've always believed that Albion, in its pinnacle, can be a true cross-platform experience that would include consoles as well. There's a lot of challenges to overcome on the way there. Making an MMORPG for consoles is quite a challenge. Typically, controllers aren't as good at navigating UIs, etc. So this is something that we really believe, if we want to do it, we want to do it right. So there's a lot of setup that we want to think about first, that we want to do the research on, that we want to see if we can get it all done. There's also the store integration, like getting it onto the consoles itself. Microsoft for Xbox and Sony for the PlayStation, they have quite different store setups as well. So there's like really things that we have to research there. But ultimately, we would like to have Albion run on a console and make it available to players on consoles. That's something that we feel is in the future for Albion.
Yeah, maybe it's worth adding that the way we think about it is the same way that we've thought about the other platform extension, which is mobile. We set up Albion from the very beginning to be expandable to different platforms, but we also didn't want the expansions to get in the way of the main game. So if consoles are happening, they are happening in a way where they don't interfere with the main game, right? And that's the important precondition for us to be confident that it doesn't take away resources to an amount that would risk the main game development. Please make a cape backpack that reduces crop weights like the Gatherer capes.
I mean, we talked about island revamping before. Farming is essentially one of the economic activities that you can do in the game. The gathering activities all have their gathering gear. We don't have something similar for farming. I don't think it's outlandish to think that we might want to have that as well. We don't have details. We know that we would like to have it. We would have to spec out those details, and in the line of what I talked about before, putting a feature set together for an island rework or island extension. We would definitely also think about this and see if it's opportune, and then we would potentially add this as well. Yeah.
All right, that was all the questions and comments we had time for today. Thank you very much for sending them in and keep them coming. I hope we were able to show that there really isn't that much of a difference between the way that these guys handle things and I handled things. And we can all now be excited to see where they're taking the game in the next couple of months. Stay tuned for more dev talks coming on this channel. Thank you for listening and see you soon.
Yeah.